right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the most back of the basics to which we are too.
I, that kind of got away from you for a minute there, didn't it?
It usually does. I am, as always, Pastor Don, and I am joined by our absolutely magnificent co host, Courtney Fraley.
All right.
So, we are going to be picking up from where we left off the other day with Exodus chapter 8. And for those of you who haven't been following us a whole lot lately, I don't blame you. Things have been a bit intermittent. We are still doing the two live streams a month pattern that we've been doing. At the beginning of the month, we did the Gospels live stream, and we're working through the Gospel of Mark. But today, we are back to our old haunts in the book of Exodus, working through our Exodus edition, and we got some fun stuff for today. Courtney and I have already looked ahead a little bit, and this is just gonna get all manner of wild, and I'm really looking forward to this. This is gonna be every bit as silly and bloody and weird as we have come to expect from the Bible, because we are in the middle of the plagues. We are heaping helpings of plagues upon the shoulders of the Pharaoh here. So, shall we dive right into it? Do we want to just dive right into it?
I mean, this whole passage is anti-frog propaganda, frankly, and I don't appreciate it. I, for one, love frogs, and do not wish to speak ill of them. A plague of frogs.
Yeah.
Come on, what is this? What is this, Australia in a Simpsons episode? Come on, man.
Or is God simply declaring that French cuisine is in fact a plague? Because
What?
frogs' legs, notably French cuisine.
Oh, yeah.
Go on, I didn't think that was that inaccessible of a joke.
It's not inaccessible, it's just not very good.
Oh, we're gonna be like that.
I am a lover of the truth and a follower of the way. No, come on, let's get the fuck on with it.
All right, well, you're our typical reader, so why don't you go ahead and get the aforementioned fuck on with it?
Okay, fine. Let's see here. Okay. The second plague, frogs. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, 'Thus says the Lord, let my people go so that they may serve me. If you refuse to let them go, I will plague your whole country with frogs. The Nile shall swarm with frogs. They shall come up into your palace, into your bedchamber and your bed, into the houses of your officials and of your people, and into your ovens and your kneading bowls. Frogs shall come up on you and your people and on all your officials.'" And the Lord said to Moses, "Say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff over the rivers, the canals, and the pools, and make frogs come up on the land of Egypt." So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. But the magicians did the same by their secret arts and brought frogs up on the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron and said, "Pray to the Lord to take away the frogs from me and my people, and I will let the people go to sacrifice to the Lord." Moses said to Pharaoh, "Kindly tell me when I am to pray for you and your officials and your people, that the frogs may be removed from you and your houses and be left only in the Nile." And he said, "Tomorrow." Moses said, "As you say, so that you may know that there is no one like the Lord our God. The frogs shall leave you and your houses and your people. They shall be left only in the Nile." Then Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried out to the Lord concerning the frogs that he had brought upon Pharaoh. And the Lord did as Moses requested. The frogs died in the house. Oh, that's not much better. The frogs died in the houses, the courtyards, and the fields. And they gathered them together in heaps, and the land stank. Yeah, I bet. But when Pharaoh saw that there was a respite, he hardened his heart and would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said.
Do we want to stop here and talk about just the one plague, or do we want to just do it all in one go?
I have a feeling doing it, if I recall the writing style we're dealing with here, I have a feeling doing it all in one go is going to make a lot more sense than I suspect.
Then by all means,
what do you
continue.
think? Alrighty. The third plague, gnats. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Say to Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the earth, so that it may become gnats throughout the whole land of Egypt." And they did so. Aaron stretched out his hand with his staff and struck the dust of the earth, and gnats came on humans and animals alike. All the dust of the earth turned into gnats throughout the whole land of Egypt. The magicians tried to produce gnats by their secret arts, but they could not. There were gnats on both humans and animals. And the magician said to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said. The fourth plague, flies. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Rise early in the morning, and present yourself before Pharaoh, as he goes out to the water, and say to him, 'Thus says the Lord, let my people go, so that they may serve me, because if you will not let my people go, I will send swarms of flies on you, your officials and your people, and into your houses. The houses of the Egyptians shall be filled with swarms of flies, as will be the land where they live. But on that day I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people live, so that no swarms of flies shall be there, that you may know that I, the Lord, am in this land. Thus I will make a distinction between my people and your people. This sign shall appear tomorrow.'" The Lord did so, and great swarms of flies came into the house of Pharaoh and into his officials' houses, and in all of Egypt the land was ruined because of the flies. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Go, sacrifice to your God within the land." But Moses said, "It would not be right to do so, for the sacrifices that we offer to the Lord our God are offensive to the Egyptians. If we offer in the sight of the Egyptians sacrifices that are offensive to them, will they not stone us? We must go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God as he commands us." So Pharaoh said, "I will let you go to sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, provided you do not go very far away. Pray for me." Then Moses said, "As soon as I leave you, I will pray to the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart tomorrow from Pharaoh, from his officials, and from his people. Only do not let Pharaoh again deal falsely by not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord." So Moses went out from Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord, and the Lord did as Moses asked. He removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh, from his officials, and from his people. Not one remained. But Pharaoh hardened his heart this time also, and would not let the people go. So we've arrived at the fuck around and find out part of the Bible. I mean, I feel like there's quite a few. It's a recurring theme.
Yeah, there's a lot of fuck aroundery and finding outery happening in in this passage in particular, and this really does kind of set the stage for what's to come. Before I give you license to poke at every little thing, I'm gonna throw out a couple of interesting points out of Alter's translation here, particularly when it comes to what the NRSVUE has identified as the plague of gnats. So I'm just gonna read some of Alter's translation here and see if you can spot the difference.
I've been to Salt Lake. I get the image. Whoa.
Or do you? So this is what Alter's translation reads, starting from verse 12. "And the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the land, and there will be lice in all the land of Egypt." Have you spotted the difference yet? So I'm going to read from Alter's notes here. The term kinam is a collective noun, and kinim, a plural, generally mean lice, although it has been suggested that the term might mean gnats or mosquitoes. And basically, the fact that lice is the more common reading of that term, according to Alter, which I tend to agree with, and the remaining plagues here are specifically about basically fucking up the people of Egypt. They're maddening and discomforting, but not actual threats to survival, as Alter puts it.
Yeah.
They're annoying, they're frustrating as hell, they're huge quality of life issues, but they aren't lethal. They aren't life-threatening or injurious as yet. And I think that reading it as gnats is definitely frustrating, but it's also like a bit weaker. Lice, on the other hand, oh dip, as Jason might say. that's an issue. That fits the model of inconvenience that's happening here, I think, a little bit better. So I tend to read it more that way. Having said,
inconvenience is a very mild term for what you're describing. Misery.
Yeah,
it's inducing misery, but not like death.
yes. An easily correctable misery, and that's.
I mean, I feel like the blood thing would be the worst of these, and they started out with that. So.
Well, now this is another thing that's kind of highlighted, at least in Alter's notes here as well, that I always tend to highlight when we're getting to this too, is God kind of got a 3-for-1 here, if you think about it. Like, the creation of the plagues, the first plague is turning the waters to blood. Well, where the hell did the frogs come from? They came out of the water because they can't live in blood anymore. And they went into the houses, into freaking everywhere, because the water is no longer a place for them. So plague 1 causes plague 2. Causes plague 3 because the frogs then die because, well, when your lungs are partly filled with blood, you don't tend to survive very long. So they probably picked up a bunch of shit and were damaged and start passing away. And then come the gnats, or if you prefer the lice, which, disease extends from all the dead frogs and the stink and things of that nature. And after the lice are... I mean,
you definitely can't just get lice from frogs, but...
Right, but it creates the disease in sort of kind of dirtier environment, which lice and other things tend to spring up, and that's where the flies come from as well. So, like, there's an interconnectedness that's happening with the first chunk of plagues, is that they're all kind of leading into each other. With, again, as I highlighted when we were talking about the plagues back in the beginning, God, via Moses, regularly saying to Pharaoh, there are off-ramps here. Take the off-ramp.
Yeah.
And so... the thing is, and that actually creates a very good lesson here, whereby, I'm going to use the term sinning because, well, religious discussion, but I don't wish to attach all the evangelical baggage to it. When we do harm, when we do damage to the world around us, we cause our own destruction, and when we don't take the off-ramps towards repentance, those destructions build on each other. And that's really the theme that's going on here, and I've always gotten in arguments with the whole Sunday school approach to this, where we're just like, they're isolated things. First there were frogs, then there were bugs, then there were other bugs, and they all happened separately in their own discrete little things. No, like they built on each other. Naturally, God's using nature to build plague upon plague upon plague, and providing for the people of Egypt and for Pharaoh himself. Look, this can stop any time. All you have to do is just stop being a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
a slaver's gonna slave. I mean,
yeah. I was on a podcast just the other day, very briefly. I was on for the whole thing because of time reasons, but we were talking about the end of the book of Numbers, I think it was, where we were looking at codes involving slavery, which is a big damn thing in the Bible. And
it was very common throughout a lot of history.
Right.
There's some crazy shit that we keep fucking getting into. Ugh.
Yeah.
Man.
So, like, it's there, it's functional, but I've said this before, I'll say this again. The Bible is not given to us as... with specific guides for how our institutional and organizational and social structures are meant to work. We're not given, this is the correct form of government, this is the correct form of marriage, this is the correct form of relationships. That's not in the Bible. And it's not part of the story. What God does in those situations is God gets into there and starts saying, look, here's how you change things for the better. This is where you are now. I'm not approving it, but I am telling you that this is the direction you have to go. You have to do this next step. In temporal moment, God is always about the next step, not about mandating the entire system. The systemic changes are left up to us, which is why God here is not saying via Moses to Pharaoh, time for you to end this slavery-based system, the reign of kings, the oppression of people. You can't be building public works projects on the back of enslaved laborers. Good job with the invention of beer. No comments there. But, like, use it for better shit. Like, none of that's here.
Good job on the beer. No notes.
Yeah, no, it's beer. Totally cool with that. Don't use it as a means of keeping slave labor in line, though. Just use it. Pubs. The Irish are going to come up with these in a couple millennia. Just try to do that now. That would be great. So, yeah, but in the temporal moment, God doesn't do that. God is just, okay, you are here now. You are linear. You exist here. This is next. Double props for anybody who caught the subtle Star Trek joke, because you know I'm not going to not make one.
I actually did not catch this one.
Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 1, Episode 1, Emissary. Sisko's conversations with the prophets repeatedly refer to him as linear, saying, you exist here. I could chapter and verse that one better than the actual damn Bible. Oh, I'm a great pastor.
Yeah, no, that's actually fantastic.
Yeah. So that's kind of the general arc of where we are here with this. So having now said my piece, now I'm going to kick it over to you and allow you to poke holes in it.
Well, poke holes in it? Come on, I'm not just a emissary of destruction. Let's be nice. I love the increasing degrees of fuck around, find out in this. It cracks me up. Like, the extent to which he's got a chance to just, not be a dumbass. It just keeps coming back, you know?
Yeah. And the mind...
The very last one. The very last one. It's pretty clear about, okay, no, they died and they were stinking heaps with the frogs.
Yeah.
Just...
Look, I'm gonna say for the record, God didn't have to be kind of a petty bitch about the frog situation, but God chose to be, and I'm kind of here for it. So you're gonna pray that the frogs go away? Fine, they're all dead. You clean them the fuck up.
But the last one seemed like okay, and this one, no, they're just gone. They're just gone.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
Mm-hmm.
Cool, because we're working, we're making compromises, and then you go back on your word.
Right, and it's
cool. Here we go.
It's worth noting the mindset of Pharaoh throughout this is, I got mine, why do I need to bother? It's literally the Musk mindset is, I'll make this deal with you, you do your part, you gave me what I want, the fuck am I going to help you for? It all worked out for me in the end. Peace.
It's becoming the American way. I don't dig it.
Yeah, it is very American, and it's important for us to see how Pharaoh's processing all of this, because Pharaoh is treating with Moses on the condition that Moses can do something about it. But as soon as Moses does something about it, Pharaoh is immediately dismissive of it. And there's two ways to take that, one of which is the one that I just described, where we're talking about him as kind of a proto-Trump or proto-Musk, who's just like, I got mine, so fuck you bitches. But it's just as appropriate to look at Pharaoh's mental evolution as, oh, well, that happened and it didn't seem so hard, so maybe it was natural causes and it wasn't really divine. Maybe I was overreacting. The self-justification of it. Well, look, I negotiated with you for this thing to happen, and then you went away and it happened. So I have no proof that it was you. I'm just going to assume it happened. All on its own.
You didn't do that. It just happened.
Yeah, and that is a very, very common way of thinking for people who address issues of the divine is, you ask for something and it happens, and then you're like, well, I didn't see God step down from the clouds with, lightning and thunder, melt the faces off of a few people nearby, Ark of the Covenant style, and then make the thing happen. So I'm just going to assume it was random chance. We do like to write off God sometimes, particularly when
we write off everything we don't understand. It's a rather memorable. What was it? The 12th Doctor said something about humans have a remarkable capacity for self-deception.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I would go
for why we just feel like we're just not going to talk about that anymore. Yeah.
And I would go even a little bit further than that to say that the kind of self-deception we're dealing with here, kind of forgot where I was going with that. It's very fundamentally human, but it's I'm trying to find the right words. It's
Take a second. It'll come.
yeah, it's mechanical. It's dismissive. It's we ask for God to do a thing, then God does the thing, and we see how it happens, and we dismiss it because we can explain it, because it seems reasonable to us. It's the newness of it. It's wanting something new and shiny, and then as soon as you get it, you're like, well, it's just a thing. You know, it's like wanting to be married, and then when you're married and realizing that it's like hard work, being like, I want a divorce. This is fucking tough. It's once you see what the thing actually is, and it's not as big and bright and shiny as you expected, you're just like, what the fuck is this? Why do I care? We tend to write things off when we see them, and we forget in the moment that God is, despite the occasional, as I mentioned earlier, petty bitch moment, God is generally not actually over dramatic in the way. That's humans who are over dramatic. We ask for God to do a thing, and we expect there's going to be bells and whistles and fireworks and flamethrowers, and Pharaoh said, well, can your God make the frogs go away? And was probably expecting them to do the whole Looney Tunes frog song and dance right out the door. And instead, they just died. So, but what we forget is that...
This isn't what I wanted. Meh.
Well, we forget that God is not the God of what. God is the God of why. Like, it doesn't matter how it happened. It happened to you when you wanted it to. The mechanics of it are largely irrelevant. You asked for the frogs to be gone, and when you asked for the frogs to be gone, you asked it of God and God's representative, and the frogs were gone. Like, you got what you wanted, but because
this is along the same lines as why I get so frustrated when at the sheer existence of like the God versus science debate.
Yeah.
Like, how just because we're learning more about the how, that doesn't mean we can't ask why. That doesn't mean like
the belief that God must be inexplicable. Like, God is in God's fullness inexplicable, but the laws of the universe were created by God. They are the tools that God predominantly and primarily uses. Who the hell are you to expect God not to use God's own tools?
Right. Exactly.
But
it's like, well, there's already a mechanism in place in the system I created to perfectly execute this thing I want to do. Let's do it.
Yeah, I don't need to make Metatron get off his divine Alan Rickman ass and do shit here. It's built into the system.
I hope when we go to heaven we meet Alan Rickman. That's great.
That's a conversation I'd like to have. I would like to see Alan Rickman hanging out with the Metatron, if there actually is the Metatron, in quote unquote heaven. But that would
Isn't that again like more Catholic fan fiction?
Yeah, I mean, it is. Like the whole angelic orders and shit's all Catholic fan fiction. But if it turns out they're right, I would just love to see the actual Metatron and Alan Rickman just having a beer together or something. That would be hilarious.
That's pretty fantastic, yeah.
But my point being is that, like, apply this to Pharaoh or to any leader when divine intervention happens through the mechanics of reality. They do as Pharaoh does. Like, well, that wasn't God. That was dead frogs. And that's what the hardening of the heart looks like. And we talked about the hardening of the heart as a self-act. And you'll see in... I don't know if it's in... Because I was looking at the altar while we were doing it. I don't know if it's in the NRSVUE as well, but I'm going to check real quick. The hardening... Yeah, no, it is in the NRSVUE as well. If you look at verse 32, Pharaoh hardened his heart this time. It's not God hardened Pharaoh's heart.
I think the confusion comes from that weird verse, again, that I keep picking at. Of, God saying that God would harden Pharaoh's heart.
Mm. And I think that we're dealing with either a combination of mistranslation or misrepresentation with that. Because if we look at the mechanics of what's happening, Pharaoh is allowing that dismissal of God to define how he understands God. And okay, props to Chell who just dropped this absolute banger of a line in the chat. He's turning the frickin' frogs dead. Like, beautiful.
Thank you. Oh my God,
that.
thank you.
I needed that in my life today. Thank you.
Yeah, who doesn't need that? That's amazing. Thank you, Chell.
Yes. So, yeah. So the hardening of the heart is exactly that. It's Pharaoh being like, I expected bells and whistles. You said divine, and all I got was a bunch of dead frogs. The fuck?
You want the frogs to not be dead? Like,
but because he didn't get it with all the bells and whistles he wanted, suddenly it's not God. But the identifying markers of God's involvement are not the drama and the spectacle. The identifying markers of God's involvement are the who and the why. God is visible in the coincidence. Like, we dismiss as random chance that these things would happen, but random chance isn't a functional element of the scientific universe. Like, that there is no actual element of surprise on the periodic table, as much as we might like to enjoy the joke.
yeah, are you sure on that? As far as, like, I thought, like, randomness was actually an essential part of, like,
I mean, the fact that there is randomness,
physics.
yes, but what I mean to say is that, like, kismet or like the type of patterned random happenstance that we see so frequently in our lives is more common than would be indicated by the statistics of randomness in a truly disordered, randomized universe. Hell, I look at my own life. Statistically, there's no explanation for why half the shit that happened in my own life should have happened. Like, none of that should have happened. But the fact that it did and put me in the position to do what I'm doing and connected me with my wife and connected her the ability to do all these different things. If we look at them from a rationalistic standpoint, sure, they're just things that happened. But if we ask, well, they could have happened to anyone, why did they happen to me? And then we start to ask, well, it could have happened to this person. All of these things could have happened slightly different, like a 2-degree change in, the angle one person walks on one day could mean life or death for another person down the road. And yeah, so I'm getting into temporal causality at this point, but God is the just as we describe sin as kind of an avalanche of cause and effect, God as a countervailing force to that is also working through an avalanche of cause and effect by tweaking via the Holy Spirit the directions that we might move. Naturalistic means the real miracles are the friends we met along the way is not totally wrong. So
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And so that's also the reason why people dismiss divine involvement, is because they don't see it in the way they expect. They look for pillars of fire and smoke and burning bushes, and we don't normally get that. Like, if God is using that kind of methodology to interact with people, then something is seriously fucking wrong. God does not do that unless things are so far gone that there is nothing else that can be done. And yeah, if we ever get to that point, then we're in fucking trouble. So
party at ground zero.
Yeah, pretty much. Pillars of salt much. So yeah, that gets us to my take on the miraculous divine involvements of the Almighty here. Anything else you want to poke at with this one? It's surprisingly straightforward, despite the fact that there's 3 damn plagues here.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, I'm looking ahead and I'm like, oh no, I know how this goes. This is going to work just fine. It's all one big one. Mm-hmm. Just the reading will be a fun part of it.
Yeah.
I like reading a story out loud. That's the nice thing about having a kid. Mm-hmm. But no, I feel like we've kind of covered it. Let me take a look around.
Yeah,
Because I feel like this is an excellent ending point, too. I just want to make sure there's nothing I missed.
something in verse 25 I might want to poke at here. What's the NRSV here? Entreat on my behalf. And Moses said, look, I am... Okay, 25, then... Huh. There is a bigger difference here than I'm seeing here.
Ah, have we found a
Possibly.
tidbit to add to
Oh,
the
no wonder.
situation
No
here?
wonder. The altar in the NRSV we were not lining up, and then I realized that's because the back half of chapter 7 in this is actually the first half of chapter 7 here. So the amount of verses are different.
The divides are different. Yeah, you said in the
Yeah.
original there's not any verses or anything like that. It's just one big long, like wall
Okay, so
of text.
In the NRSVUE, it would be the end of verse 29, and I'm looking at Alter's notes here. In the end of verse 29, we get, only do not let Pharaoh again deal falsely by not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord. In Alter's translation, only let not Pharaoh continue to mock by not sending the people off to sacrifice to the Lord. There's a greater intensity in Alter's translation, and I'm reading that up.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Because there seems to be a sort of like, here I come again as a messenger sort of vibe in this, in the verbiage that's used in this translation.
Right, and it's worth noting, and I'm going to reference this here as well. In the previous verse, we get Pharaoh saying, "I will let you go to sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, provided you do not go very far away. Pray for me." In Altar, Pharaoh said, "I myself will send you off that you may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Only you must not go far away. Entreat on my behalf." So when Moses responds, "Look, I'm going out from your presence, and I shall entreat the Lord that the horde may turn away from Pharaoh and from his servants and from his people tomorrow. Only let not Pharaoh continue to mock by not sending the people off to sacrifice to the Lord." Moses is deliberately reflecting Pharaoh's language choice back at him, because Pharaoh's kind of bless your hearting him a little bit here. Pray for me, give me your thoughts and your prayers. See what your God can do for me. Using the kind of pseudo-religious kind of almost patronizing language here, and Moses in his response is responding in kind, but the word that we translate as mock here is hatel. So first off, we got it's clearly a formal rejoinder to his commentary earlier. The King James renders this word as deal deceitfully, but it really does in most modern versions to mean in other locations to mock or to toy with. So this is another case of the NRSVUE being kind of softer with its language than it really needs to be as to what's happening here. Because basically what's happening here is we've got Pharaoh saying, "I will let you do this. Only don't go too far because you're still mine, but pray for me." And Moses is responding, "Okay, well, we'll go out and we'll take care. Only don't fuck with us."
Yeah.
Like, he's pivoting, he's responding in structural kind, but pivoting with an intensity that are kind of
He's matching energy.
He's matching presentation, but he's dialing up the energy.
Yeah.
Because Pharaoh's kind of keeping that neutral, diplomatic kind of, "Well, I'm in charge, so please pray for me. Show respect to your leader." And Moses is responding with, "But have you considered fucking off?" Like, there's a real...
As per my last email, let my people go.
Yes, it is as per my last email energy writ large. Thank you. That is what I was looking for.
Yay.
Yes.
Helping.
Got it in one. Perfect. So that's like this is what is lost with the translational approaches of text like the NRSVUE, is in the pursuit
And
of...
they're understandable approaches if you want to understand what's actually there, but it's complicated.
Yeah. And that's like when people say, well, the Bible says what it says. I'm like, bullshit, it does. Like,
Why don't you tell me what it says, and we'll talk for a minute.
Yeah, exactly. Because, yeah, even the NRSVUE says what it says, but it says what it says because you translated it that way. It says what it says because simplification.
Translation is not an exact science.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, anyone here. I'm gonna bust out my weeb mode for a minute. Anybody who is like an English-speaking fan of anime, especially an older one, where you may have had more experience with really bad translations, it's not even often that they messed with the language. Sometimes it's that they didn't mess with the language. Like, so lines come out like, "You're so easygoing," or "Even dinosaurs are here."
Yeah.
And it's like, that doesn't sound right. And it's, that's...
Yeah, and the
regionalization is a thing.
Yeah, I mean, like,
and that's just
seriously. I have to make this point for multiple reasons, but like looking at translational efforts between Japanese and English is actually a really good way to get a handle on this. Like, if you look at translations of games in like the 80s, for example, they're actually more like the 80s and the 90s translations of Japanese text in like role playing. Look at the early Final Fantasies, for example. Or like if you prefer some of the terribleness even in like Xenogears, which is my favorite game, but I have to acknowledge the localization wasn't great. You look at these and you're like, wow, the English localizers did a bad job. No, they didn't. They were extremely faithful to the Japanese. The problem is when you are faithful to the original language, it sounds batshit insane in the target language. Which is why, and I will never stop doing this, I really have to give a huge shout out to the localization team behind Final Fantasy XIV, which has done some of the most masterful language work I've ever seen. Like, you got a guy who speaks entirely in King James style English, and they nail it perfectly. Like, and it's specific.
Nice.
But that whole his whole bit is specifically reflective of him in the Japanese, where he speaks in complicated keigo structures, but we don't have keigo is Japanese politeness levels.
Yes.
He speaks in very high formal kind of politeness levels in Japanese. We don't have politeness levels in English. So they're like, the fuck do we do with this? But the whole game has kind of late Middle Ages patina on the language anyway, which is, again, chef's kiss, perfectly done. But then they got this one guy who's like super fucking formal. Like, what the hell do we do about that? King James, bitches. And that's where they go with it. And they nail it every single time. And that's what good translation looks like. This is why I stick with Robert Alter over just doing the NRSVUE for Old Testament work, is because translating is more than just the academic literalization of the word. And the NRSVUE is a good starting point because it is so academic, but it cannot be our end point either. I started a rant, went through 80s video games, landed on Final Fantasy XIV, and still brought it home to Bible translation. That is what it means to be a pastor.
A+.
See, I know my job.
You can keep your job for now.
Huzzah! I can eat today. Well, maybe I probably don't need to. All right.
Stop that.
So.
Hey, hang on. I got to call you on. I call people on the carpet on this now. Self-loathing deals splash damage.
Fair enough.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So, anything else we want to poke at?
I think we've poked this bear pretty thoroughly.
As bear, there is joke there, but I will strive past it. So, anything else we want to say for today, or shall we call this an end to streaming? We've managed to keep it to within an hour, which is fucking record-breaking for us, just about.
Well, that's fantastic. I feel like we actually covered the material, and
yeah, we did. Honestly, we've notwithstanding the kind of pre-stream where it was waiting for us to get started. I'm looking at the timer on the stream right now. We're at almost exactly an hour, which means we've got a solid 45 minutes here, which is like positively terse for us. So,
Have you checked the chat to see
yeah.
if there's anything we should...
Yeah, anybody from the chat have any follow-ups here? Any last questions before we sign ourselves out for the day? And having asked that and recognizing there's like a 30-second delay here, so I've asked the question, and now we're gonna be like, okay, do singing Jeopardy theme. I am old and no one knows what the fuck this is, so I'm gonna keep doing it. I am so freaking old.
Simply stunning. Anyway.
Yeah. Chat says they're all good. So, they got my terrible Jeopardy parody, and I think that's enough for us. So, for those of you who are following along who aren't part of the Discord community already, please do that. Like, most of our church community is on our Discord server. We've got in-person folk here as well now. So if you actually are in the greater kind of Ashia area, come stop by. Like, we have worship every Sunday. It tends to get a little fun. But also we have stuff starting to go off during the week too. And there's a lot of new things that are popping off this year. So if you are in the Japan area, come on down. But as most people tend not to be, online. Like, we started out as an online church, and a lot of our work is done in that space.
I would say the vast majority of it, but then again, I don't live in Japan, so...
Well, we are slowly starting to gain traction physically as well, and believe it or not, the physical side is taking a lot more of my time than I expected these days too. So, but either is good.
It's painful.
Yeah, either is good, and we are trying to build so many new and useful things. And one of the things we most love is being a place where people can go, particularly online, to have church when you can't get church elsewhere. There's a lot of folk out there who are not in safe situations, who aren't in places where they can explore a God who isn't MAGA murderous. And, this can be that space for you. So if you're watching this, consider this an invitation. Come check us out. Join in. Hop on. We'll be happy to see you. For those of you who are following along, the wisest thing you can do in any particular situation, the most helpful thing you can do, the kindest, the most loving, the most compassionate thing to do is what Courtney tells you to do.
Love one another?
Well, that...
Like, share, and subscribe.
Yes, also that. Both of those are good. Yeah, and I say this as much for our own community members as anybody. Like, simply throwing this shit out on the Facebooks and the Tumblrs and the Reddits and whatnot really does actually help us quite a bit. The more people can...
It does. Every time you share a link, the search algorithms like it and stuff like that. You have to trick the crazy, like pseudo-intelligent algorithms into liking us so that people will find us.
Trick the AI into thinking we're popular so we can get popular. That's pretty much how it works. So, yeah, spam that shit out there into the world, annoy your friends and family, treat it like we're Cutco knives and you're an unsuspecting teenager. I'm kidding. Not that bad. Oh, God. I just brought back trauma for myself. Oh, God.
Fantastic.
All right. But, yeah, so... Other than that, got a lot of stuff coming up. Worship this week is again going to be in Japanese because we had to juggle our schedule, but we'll be back to normal from next week. Details to everything are on the website when I remember to put them up there. But if you have questions, hop on the Discord server, ask them there, or just send me an email because you can get at that from the website too. But most importantly, as I said earlier, listening to Courtney is the best thing. Be kind to each other. Love each other. Love your neighbor. That's the whole thing.
But also, please like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, I'll also do that too. Yes, that we can be your neighbors, and so you can love us by like, sharing, and subscribing. See, brought it home. Got there in the end. Right. All right, so take care, everybody.
Thanks for joining us.
We will see you on the next one. Peace out, y'all.
Bye.